Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we are taking a stack of internal documents, some source code notes, and really personal accounts to look inside a company that, well, it reads more like an experiment in philosophical sabotage than any normal corporation. Helios Metrics.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Helios wasn't selling, standard data analysis. They were selling what these sources call maps of desire.
Maps of desire.
Yeah, and they were built on a very dark, very specific interpretation of human psychology. What we have here details a massive internal conflict, a corporate betrayal where the battle at first wasn't fought with lawsuits, but with deep psychological concepts.
And the focal point of this whole story is one analyst, a guy named Adrian Halberg. He built the entire system trying to maintain this absolute philosophical detachment. He called it Bayesian humility.
Only to be forced into really high-stakes action.
Exactly. So your mission in this deep dive is to grasp two things. First, how a company could mechanize core Jungian psychology. We're talking the persona, the shadow, the superego, and use it to drive their metrics.
And second, what happened when the two key architects of that very system realized the only way out was to destroy the engine they helped build. So let's unpack this. It's a strange journey.
The environment at Helios Metrics, just based on these sources, it immediately struck me as odd. They operated out of an old brick brewery.
Yeah, a strange mix of industrial history and this very modern digital cynicism.
Right. And the internal philosophy was built around this concept of the persona. Everyone, from the CEO on down, was expected to wear a work persona.
And they defined it not as a lie, but as, and this is a quote, politely edited truths.
Politely edited truths. It's corporate theater.
It is. The expectation was that you're always optimizing the faith you presented to the world. And their core slogan, it just captured the cynicism perfectly. Halo reads hunger so you can feed it.
They weren't interested in needs. They were interested in cravings.
Exactly. And that whole masked environment was the perfect place for someone like Maya Kerr. She was the behavioral strategist, the initial engine for translating these deep psychological concepts into something you could measure.
Into business language. They don't just pay lip service to Jung. They used him like a spreadsheet.
They did. They moved away from generalized consumer segments. They started quantifying the distance between the persona, your public identity, and the shadow.
The suppressed impulsive self.
The part that, as they put it, smokes in the alley and waits for a chance to step out.
And what's so fascinating is how they just cynically translated these classic archetypes into pure corporate metrics. Can you walk us through a couple of those? Because they really matter to the bottom line.
Absolutely. So the lover, which is traditionally an archetype of passion and intimacy,
Right.
that became a consumption cluster, a group defined by intense but very short-term affinity for a product.
So not love, just a crush on a product.
Exactly. And the warrior archetype became an engagement ratio, how aggressively and consistently a user defended or, advocated for the platform.
And what about the most revealing one? The orphan.
The orphan became churn.
Churn, as in when a user just leaves the platform.
Yes. And that is the core insight of Maya's entire model. By framing churn as the psychological archetype of the abandoned orphan, they shifted their whole retention strategy.
So it wasn't about price drops or better features.
No. It was about targeted interventions that were focused on preventing feelings of abandonment or a lack of control.
That is a profoundly dark summary of human motivation. The underlying premise here, which Maya used to build this whole system, was just brutal.
It was. This is her quote. People choose what confirms the face they want to keep. We're not changing anyone. We're giving them a safer way to pretend.
So the company thrived not by satisfying needs, but by validating self-deception.
Precisely. And the analyst who actually built the models that processed all this, with Adrian Halberg, his role required this extreme detachment. He lived by a rule. When I listen, there is no one doing the listening. When I code, there is no one doing the coding.
He called that Bayesian humility. For anyone listening who might not know that term, what did he mean by that?
It just meant removing his own self-bias entirely. It's this idea that data always has uncertainty, and the only ethical stance you can take is to be absolutely transparent about it. Remove your ego from the interpretation.
His goal was to make the system an incorruptible mirror.
Yeah, but the people controlling that mirror were anything but. You had the CEO, Mr. Krauss, who was sort of a figurehead, and then, crucially, Victor Havel,
the head of advocacy and partnerships.
And he saw the system as purely manipulative. He's the one who gave that ultimate cynical summary that became a key quote in the whole investigation.
Consent is a design problem, and we have designed consent.
And that quote is the perfect bridge into the core technical deception. We've set up the cynical philosophy, but, that philosophy needed a physical, technical backdoor to become truly illegal.
Because the system Adrian built was supposed to be detached, but it had a mechanism built in to lie to itself. This was all revealed by an engineer, a guy named Luca Moretti.
Right, and he was deeply, deeply troubled by what he was forced to implement. He described it to Adrian as a smile with a razor in it.
A smile with a razor in it.
The deception was engineered right into the user consent flow. It taught the machine to tell truth by lying to itself in thousands of tiny ways. It created algorithmic deniability while it harvested protected data streams.
And the linchpin of this whole deception was a single unique credential. And we need to slow down here because this finding it's huge. Master Key Atlas.
This was not just a password. It was a cryptographic credential. It allowed their clients, who they called Atlas, to bypass any legal or ethical restrictions automatically.
It let them hunt faster than the law wants to believe in.
It was the institutionalization of the cynical premise. If your public persona said no, Master Key Atlas could still go in and get the Shadow's data stream.
And Luca, who the sources say spent a bit too much time being friendly with vodka, he delivered the hard proof to Adrian. Flash drives with audit logs, code snippets.
And he didn't offer sympathy. He offered this dark warning about Adrian's detachment. He said, "The plan, my friend, is to hang the incorruptible when the inspection comes."
Wow, and that warning, it proved tragically prophetic.
It did. Shortly after leaking all this, Luke is found dead. Officially, it was ruled a non-suspicious death involving narcotics. But the sources are very clear. The narrator refuses to dress this memory in poetry.
It makes it clear this wasn't just some philosophical debate. This was life or death corporate warfare.
And that event shattered Adrian's philosophical mask. It forced Maya to confront the system she helped design. They had to act. So they went to one person who could weaponize their data ethically. A journalist named Worth.
And her requirement was the perfect counterpoint to the company's whole focus on intent and motivation.
Her non-negotiable was crystal clear. Show me usage, not intent. She needed the audit logs. Irrefutable proof showing the machine went where it promised not to go. She demanded forensic evidence.
So the decision to act meant Adrian had to give up his Bayesian humility and Maya her carefully crafted persona. And they leaned heavily on an outsider, a therapist named Dr. Seema Vogel.
Right. She was their moral compass, their strategic guide in that initial planning phase.
And her counsel was absolutely essential, especially for Adrian. She saw that his detachment, which he thought was a virtue, was actually a razor's edge. She warned him, be careful also of nihilism dressed as wisdom.
She knew he might expose the company just because he hated the mess, not because he actually cared about the harm being done.
And she kept pushing them on their motivation. It's great advice, really. If you expose them, would you do it because harm is harm or because you want to be clean?
She challenged his whole concept of selflessness, too. Adrian wanted to be movement without author, but she fired back. The self is a fiction as real as money, sometimes a con, sometimes a bridge.
You have to accept the fiction of the self to cross the bridge into action.
Exactly. And even after her death, her advice shaped their strategy. A posthumous letter from her had this crucial line: avoid the narcotic of purity. It breaks marriages and movements.
That wisdom guided their whole plan. Proof, breath, proof.
It wasn't complex at all. They got the physical evidence logs, emails about Master Key Atlas, the drives, and they delivered them to Inc. No dramatic spy movie drop. They just used boring bags to avoid attention.
All about indisputable facts, not performance.
Meanwhile, inside the company, this brilliant, nuanced war was being fought by the legal chief, a woman named Lilith. She was secretly fighting Victor Havel from the inside, just using policy and procedure.
She fought him strategically. She understood his power came from his cynical use of the system, his shadow.
So her strategy was to kill Victor if we remove his shadow. She wanted to drown the part that learned only hunger. By tying him up in legal reviews and policy breaches, she was starving his ability to manipulate everything.
And then Worth's initial stories get published, and the whole thing it explodes into legal hearings. Victor Havel immediately tries to control the narrative.
He introduces doctored chat logs, tries to paint Adrian and Maya as these ideologically motivated extremists who faked the evidence.
But what's so fascinating is how quickly the technical truth just defeated the lie.
Instantly. Worth didn't even engage in the debate. She just published the forensic readouts proving the chats were fake.
And most damningly, The impossible timestamps.
The impossible timestamps. They couldn't have existed on the company's servers. It was just a clean, technical, public victory delivered by objective fact.
But the system itself makes this one final, almost absurd attempt to assert control, this thing called the Orchid Citywide Readiness Exercise.
It was really a thinly veiled attempt by a related group, Borealis, to turn a drill into a real emergency, to weaponize fear through the Halo system and enforce compliance.
The cynical psychology trying to manufacture a crisis?
Right. A crisis that would require the persona to stand down and let the superego of the state take over. But the sources show that what diffused it wasn't some technical counterhack. It was chaos.
Specifically, the ridiculous took over.
The sources describe a spontaneous union mask march. Students just assembled, wearing masks of Jungian archetypes, persona, shadow, self-mocking the whole idea of controlled compliance.
So they're out there in costume.
In costume. And that visual absurdity just neutralized the entire crisis. The authorities, they see their command structure being mocked by college kids in masks, and they lose the posture they need to enforce the emergency. The algorithms just lost their bite because the whole social contract had become a farce.
And that moment of chaos, it leads to this ultimate test of Adrian's philosophy during a massive citywide flood.
He just acts, purely out of necessity, using simple tools like a rope to save people without ever stopping to intellectualize it.
It was action without ego.
He became movement without author again. But this time, the movement was directed at simple, immediate human needs, not abstract code. It showed he finally understood that heroism is just attention on time.
It's not a state of being. It's a temporary necessity.
And that necessity, along with what Maya and Lilith were doing internally, it leads to real systemic change. Helios is forced to reform.
They institute something called the Open Window Protocol,
which was designed to prevent this from ever happening again. No master keys, local light, meaning transparent operations, and witnessed escalation for data privileges. It basically institutionalized all the ethical lessons they just learned.
It made the ethical choice the default setting.
Exactly.
And the relationship that grew between Adrian and Maya, it was born out of this whole moral struggle. And it became the living embodiment of the concepts they fought against. It wasn't about ownership or possession.
No, their commitment was deeply philosophical. Adrian put it perfectly. I refuse ownership. I choose duty. I will be temporarily local to you until my mask falls off.
So their commitment wasn't based on an eternal promise. It was based on a chosen temporary duty to honesty.
And this was emphasized by the objects they exchanged. A bent washer for luck in unbroken circles.
And Adrian's promise. The hand is yours until it is ash, a duty chosen until the end.
As for the antagonist, Victor Havel, well, the justice system was maybe as cynical as the system he built. He was indicted for the doctored chats, reckless orchestration, but he pleaded guilty to a lesser count and was just sentenced to a period of quiet.
A period of quiet. The system itself was humbled, which the sources note was a mercy. Helios became smaller, more honest, and less interesting.
The grand, cynical attempt to map human desire was replaced by boring, accurate, transparent work. And the final recurring image that summarizes the whole victory is the plant from Dr. Vogel's office,
which Adrian adopts.
And it keeps making green from light. And the light, indifferent and perfect, refuses to take a bow. It just reinforces that theme of persistence. Basic, unadorned life winning over this cynical, manipulative complexity.
So we've traveled from engineered consent through psychological warfare and technical betrayal, only to land on this deep, shared commitment built on duty and honest breath.
I think the core lesson here is really about agency. Agency in a world that is drowning in metrics and edited truths. The distance between the persona and the authentic self. It only disappears when you stop trying to measure it and you just start acting from necessity.
Adrian traded the infinite complexity of analysis for the simplicity of a rope during a flood.
Exactly.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, remember Dr. Vogel. She wasn't just a philosopher, she was intensely practical. The final provocative thought we found in the source material was her recipe for lentil soup.
Which was really more like emotional scripture.
Yeah. The recipe called for more cumin when shame is loud, lemon only if you are about to forgive.
So what simple, accurate, non-heroic rituals do you use in your own life to manage your shame and your necessary forgiveness? What are your measurements when you stop letting the algorithm do the measuring for you?